there is like an actual kind of metaphysical like distinction between the two categories.
I get. I'm not too interested in.
Who got the right point here, bro?
I'm not interested in metaphysics. I'm just saying that semantically, I think there's no difference.
Yeah.
So the way you would actually identify
the semantics are going to depend on the metaphysics.
The way you would actually identify women would be not distinct in any way, shape, or form as how you would identify females, pretty much for the most part. So what I'm saying pretty much is that the set of essential properties for being a woman is going to be similar to the set of essential properties for being a female.
Yeah. Okay. So we can go. Okay, we can go into that later. But what I meant by metaphysical, they're just referring to some actual features in reality that exist mind independently. So what I'm simply just saying is that maybe mind independently there is between gender and sex, but that mind independently there are differentiating features in reality that we can use to distinguish gender from sex, right? So when I'm talking about metaphysics, I'm not going to mysterious things, actually very tangible. And then to talk about the thing, I'm just saying that semantics are dependent, are mostly going to be dependent on the features that we can actually identify these things with, right? Because semantics, the meanings of the words, the meanings and what these words refer to, right? And obviously, these words are going to be referring to the features of the object, whether them be mind dependent or mind independent. So the semantics are going to supervene in a sense on the features of the object, right? And so I'm saying that if you think they're semantically identical and you think they mean the same thing, that would just result in them being identical in reality.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess I don't have an issue with saying that it just would supervene off the actual features of the things that we talk about. I think that's pretty obvious. But the reason I said it's just more semantic dispute is because I didn't really want to get into metaphysics. But if you want to ask me about my issue with gender realism as a whole, or that sort of idea, is that I think if you classify or identify a sort of property or a set of properties which would essentially distinct you from, let's say, women if you're a man, or from men if you're a woman.
Yes,
essential meaning the property that would be classifying you in a sort of class or sort. So just essentialism.
Wait 1 sec. I gotta go for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back. Okay, so you can place our whole essential property thing.
Sorry. Yeah, so when I say essentialism or essential property, I just mean a property that is necessary for you to be classified into some, or have membership to some sort class. So just basic essentialism. You can have an individual's view of essentialism or a more general view of essentialism, but my issue with the whole gender realism ideal is that if you're saying that there is some essential property that would distinct women from men, then generally the people that would have this or would hold to this certain property, you would expect them to have similar experiences as a woman. So, for example, if I'm a woman in Iraq, let's say, and I'm a woman in another place like the United States, then generally the type of ways we would act or how we would perceive reality, how we would behave with other people, how we would behave with men, all of that would generally seem to be consistent because there's always going to be a shared property or shared essential property there, which is just obviously not the case.
It's shared, okay. Okay, so let me just, understand some of the things you're saying, right? So you're saying that how we determine whether gender and sex are identical is based on the essential properties that, the genders and the sex share, right? So maybe gender has a property that...
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in accordance to your view, you'd be saying that we would classify objects to genders or entities to genders based on if they fulfill some sort of necessary quality to having that gender. Obviously, because you're saying that it's a real property, it's a real property that you can have. And I'm saying that, okay, well, that doesn't really make sense because the people that we would consider women then would tend to actually have similar experiences or similar things they actually experience in life. So that's why I'm confused.
Well, I'm saying there's a distinction between gender and sex. So I'm saying like, you know,
I'm talking about gender specifically. But you're saying that stop. You're saying like I'm talking about gender. I'm saying women, women. Let's say in Iraq, if they if the word gender is going to be supervening off culture, is going to be culture constructed, or something like that. That's kind of the usual view, or that's kind of how the usual view would go. Then you would just say that women around the world are not women because they don't fit into that essential property of being a woman. Like let's say in Iraq or Iraq,
that's not what I'm
sorry.
saying.
I don't get it then because if you are you
I'm
not like
saying
assigning
that
sort of
gender is
property?
like, I'm saying that gender is like a flexible category. Like I don't know. Okay, so like okay, so supposedly you're saying like these categories of gender. So like let's take being woman, and to be a woman you need to meet XYZ criteria. So like you need to have like the essential properties that need to be a woman. And then like you're saying that like okay, if we have two separate people, so we have like a woman in Iraq and like let's say we have a woman in Australia. You're asking me, what are going to be like the qualifying features or properties?
No, not really. I mean, I guess like I'll be interested in that as well because I don't really get how you actually cash out gender.
Yeah,
You're
because
saying
I
that it's
just take
it's some sort
I
of
just take
distinct,
it to be a
some sort
psychological.
of
I just take it to be a
it's some sort
psychological
of
profile.
distinct, it's some sort of distinct property from your just biological
I
sex.
just take it to be a psychological profile of the person.
Okay. That's fine, I guess. No, not really,
Yeah.
but
I take
when
psychological
when I say
profiles to
sex,
be
I just
different
mean
things.
when I say sex, I just generally mean that something which is going to be identical to a sort of facts about your biology or your biological facts.
Okay, facts about your biology.
Yeah.
Okay,
So when you say
and what are
psychological
the main
states,
facts about your biology?
I don't think that there's any sort of distinction between uh, female and male biology at birth, for example. So when you say that, yeah,
There is.
there's a difference between psychological states. Then
Yes, mom.
I don't get it because you'd be catching it out to like the difference between how like different societies actually tend to affect your psychology or your mental states. But then that would lead you into the same issue where like, let's say women in America aren't considered women in like let's say Israel because the way that their psychological states are going to be way different from your psychological states. Let's say it's just a particular
Where
problem.
hella, where hella. Um, I was gone for what you were saying, but okay.
Yeah, I'm
So
saying
you
that
said that.
if you cash it out, sorry, one second. Basically, if you cash it out to be like like a set of psychological facts or whatever, then I think you'd have to cash it out to like some sort of cultural influence on those psychological facts because I don't think that male and female psychologies or facts about your mental states are inherently different at birth, for example. So the way they would actually be growing or influenced is going to be by your set culture. And if the culture there is going to be defining the what essentially means to be a woman, then you run into the same issue where you wouldn't be a woman, let's say in Israel, if you're a woman in the United States. Although that's obviously not how we use gender.
Okay. So okay. So what you're specifically saying is that if woman is going to be a psychological facts, that's like your psychological profile. That's just going to be dependent on that could just be influenced by the culture that you partake in, and so like under
Yeah, it's
my
not like
view, woman
inherent.
in what did you say?
You're not what I'm saying is not you're not born predisposed towards sort of psychological states if you're a man or a woman.
Yes, you yes,
Prove
you
that.
are.
Prove that. Oh, 3, 2, 1, go.
Wait, but you don't think that a lot of the biological factors of men and women or their babies do contribute to the type of it's psychology. Okay, the psychology that you have is going to be linked to neurology, right? And the neurology that you
What I'm saying
have,
is that what I'm saying is that the way we would actually cash out the word woman, like let's say the United States, let's say you're like more submissive, you go and like work in kitchens, let's say. I don't think that's going to be predisposed to any way, shape, or form by facts about your biology. I don't think that's predisposed anyway. So you can say that there's differentiating facts, but I just don't
what I'm
think
saying.
that facts about gender are going to be differentiating by your biology. I think that's just doesn't make any sense. I think what you have to cash it out with is going to be like social influence, and then you just run into the same issue.
That's what I'm saying.
That seems what you were saying, right, Asher?
No, what I'm saying
Are you gonna say what you were saying? Like, why do you just keep saying like, yeah, that's not what I'm saying? Like, I know that's not what you're saying.
I said what? Yeah, that's what I was gonna do. I said what I'm saying. I said what I'm saying specifically. So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So what I'm saying specifically. Okay. What I'm saying specifically just that. What I'm saying specifically just that the type of biology you have is, going to determine, or you're going to influence, the type of psychological profile you have, such that the psychological profile you have is going to have a strong correlation with the biological profile. Psychological profile of somebody is different from the social profile of somebody, right? So, a social profile of somebody might be, to clean, to cook. We can say that's the social profile of women, right? But that social profile is going to be different from the psychological profile. What I'm saying specifically is that it's not like the social roles that you partake in, but an actual deeper, psychological state that is true of you that makes you a woman. I could care less about, obviously, like these social roles might, have some correlation to psychological roles, but social roles to me aren't relevant when we're actually, they might be relevant individual men and women, but I don't think, going to constitute to fact. I think that is going to be the type of psychological profile you have. And if that psychological profile seems to almost be identical, if that psychological profile seems to almost be identical to the type of psychological profile that a male or female would bring about, then I think that there's some justification to say that, you're a woman. Maybe like you're a male, but you are a woman based on the fact that, you have psychological tendencies.
Okay, so first of all, can you prove that these certain psychological states that you're referring to would be predisposed towards certain developments, given that you're a man or a woman? Or sorry, given that you're a male or a female, rather. And second of all, you don't really get what I'm saying. No, you don't really get what I'm saying. You don't get what I'm saying. What I said specifically is that if you cash out the psychological states to be purely supervening out the biology or purely caused by the biology, then that would just be that would be discounted for under sex under my view. I think that sex is anything that any fact about your any fact about your biology, pretty much, given this context of the conversation. And gender would be something different. If you're saying that it's not purely caused by biology, then to some degree it has to be like the essential property would have to be caused by, like I said, culture or cultural differences. And then, like I said, that doesn't dodge the difference that I gave. Stop saying that. Like I know that's not what you think you're saying, but that's exactly what you said. I don't care what you said.
No,
you wanted the same issue, like you just didn't judge.
I never said that. The biological facts are the things that determine in whole the psychological facts about you. I'm saying that, okay, you do understand like basic neurology, right? So somebody has like a certain biology.
That's not what I said. I'm not saying that. I'm not, bro, Christ. I'm not saying that you said it's entirely caused by it. I'm saying that you can think that it's determined by it to some degree, but if you're saying that it's not purely caused by it, then the other differences would be caused by something which is not biological. That's just trivial. Wait, if it's not biological, then you run into the same issue which I brought up before. You just run into a particular issue where you say that women from different cultures and backgrounds or different ways which you can influence your psychology, would just not be women.
No. I'm saying that there is a specific psychological profile independent of any cultural influences that we can identify with females and males, and these
sex, then. That's what I'm saying. If it's purely biological, then it's just sex. Because I don't get what you're cashing out as gender. Like
I'm not saying that it's purely biological. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, then what are you cashing out as gender? What are you cashing out as gender? What do you define as gender?
Yes, I already told you that. Okay, so your sex is the type of biological. Okay, I told you that the sex is the type of biological profile you have, and your gender is the type of psychological profile you have. I already told you that the psychological profile is normally going to be consistent with the biological profile, right? So, for example, in a female, even like independent, I'm saying that, like, a lot of the times independent of these like social conventions, independent of like the time before they actually start to get introduced into society, and this is true with other animals as well. They'll already have these certain psychological tendencies which you normally find in males females prefer than in contrast.
That's the point, though. It'd be identical to your biology. That's what I'm saying. That's what sex is.
No,
That's
I'm
the
not.
point.
Okay,
If
I'm
it's
not
not something
saying
which is, if it's
not
something which is
identical.
independent, if it's some, hold on.
Wait,
Dude, literally 1 second.
Gyro. If
I'll
I'm
just explain
saying
something. Yeah,
Gyro,
bro.
if I'm saying that it's Gyro, if I'm saying that it's normally going to be correlative to your biology, how is that the same thing as me saying it's going to be identical to your biology?
No, I'm saying, bro, Chris. I'm saying that if you're not saying that, then you can't be saying, unless you have like some sort of other factor that would be influencing this. If it's not something which is identical to your biology, then do you not agree that the other things
I'm
that
saying
would
that
be
they're
possible
caused by your
would be
biology,
something?
but I don't think they're reducible to any specific biological state that you have. I'm saying that they're caused
Okay,
by your.
so what,
I'm
what do you
saying
think?
that
What do you think is the
I'm
other?
saying that
If it's
mostly.
not fully
I'm saying that
reducible into it, then
mostly
what's the other? Stop. What's the other factors that would go into it? Because the way you would cash out gender is super confusing to me. It's not something which is identical to your biology, but then it's not something which is caused by society as well, or is interpreted by society as well, or
No, I
either
never
rather.
said that. I never said that it wasn't interpreted by society.
Yo, Gyro.
No, you're saying that the essential property is interpreted by society. That's what you're saying. That's what we're arguing over. But what were you saying, Isaac?
I don't know.
Yeah, wait,
Okay.
I'm saying,
I'm
do you
not
want
talking
to
about sense of
step
properties
to
here.
this?
Sorry.
Do you
I'm
want to
not talking
step to
about
this?
sense of properties here. I'm simply just saying that I'm saying that. Have you not heard about category flexibility? I'm saying that the category of being a woman is flexible, right? And I'm saying that okay, there's a certain psychological profile that we normally associate with a specific biology. Now,
That's
the
not. Dude, I
difference here is
understand
just
that
that
part.
the wait,
Not
1 second. The difference here is that the psychological profile normally supervenes on the biological profile. However, you can have some cases in which there's a psychological profile there and it's not continuous with the type of biological profile that you'd have or the type of biological profile that we'd normally expect you to have. So I'm saying that, for example, if you have a woman and that woman seems, to have this psychological profile, like if you study neurology, you know what I'm talking about. So it seems to have this like neurological or psychological profile that doesn't actually seem to be consistent with their sex, right? Then we can say that the gender is of a man, right? But their sex is of a woman. Given that there's like a given that like the properties of the psychological profile and the biological profile,
You don't get that. You don't get the issue. I said that if you say that it's supervening off of the biology, that's obviously that's like pretty simple. But okay, so you're saying it's not identical or reducible down into it. The other factor that would be presumably going into it or could be going into it plausibly would be what else?
what did you say?
Okay, if it's not identical to biology, it's not fully
Yes, no,
reducible down into biology. What is going to be the other factors that go into it?
okay,
So what are the
quantity.
basically I'm asking what are the necessary and sufficient conditions to actually having or being a woman?
To have like a basic psychological profile associated with the neurology of a woman. Of a female,
Okay, so, bro, associate with the neurology. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if it's fully supervening out biology, which is kind of like what it sounds like to me,
I never
or
said it was
what you're predisposed of from birth, and then there's no real distinction of what you're predisposed of from birth, given that you're a man or a woman,
I never
because
said
you have
that. I never said it fully
Dude,
supervenes on them.
stop speaking over me. Stop speaking over me. Okay, so
Yeah, I
there's no
never said
real
it fully
difference.
supervenes
There's
on
no
them.
real difference between what you're predisposed to as a man or a woman, presumably, or something which would be associated with gender distinctions. Then again, there's no difference. It would just be accounted for on the sex. It's not distinct from sex. That's the point.
No, okay. So number one, I never said that there was a false supervenience. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying specifically is just that the
Whoa. Oh my gosh.
I'm not saying there's a full supervenience on the psychological profile, on the biology. I'm saying that of a woman or the
You're
psychology of
dodging.
a man. Wait, 1 second.
Can you answer the question?
Wait,
I don't get what you're
wait,
asking about as a man. You're saying that it's a cluster of psychological facts about you. And I'm asking, okay, well, what are those psychological facts? What does it actually mean to be a man or a woman? If the way you actually achieve or attain those psychological facts is going to be something which is generally or mostly or fully determined by your biology, and that is not going to be distinct between man or woman to what you're predisposed towards, then again, there's no difference between sex and gender. You're just going to be the same thing.
Yeah, I already told you that the type of the cluster of psychological facts there, or the psychological facts I'm going to be talking about, are simply just the okay. So you've heard of brain structure, right? So like you've heard of how our brains work, right? I'm simply just saying that okay, in males you find that males have a specific brain structure that we associate with the male. In the case, so we'll say that, okay, given that they have this brain structure, they have, they have this brain chemistry, we'll say that the brain chemistry is that of a man because it's associated.
Rissan, stop. You don't know what predisposed means. I'm saying that when you're
You know,
like
you know,
when you're birthed, when you're birthed,
let me finish. Let me
stop.
finish.
You don't know what predisposed means. You don't know what predisposed means.
You're not tracking what I'm
I'm
saying.
saying, hold on, stop.
You
When I say
interrupted me.
predisposed, I mean, bro, can you stop, bro? Dude, I need to cut you off. When I say predisposed, I
Yes,
mean
I need
that
to
at
figure out
birth
as well.
they were about to have, or they were gonna have, or they're supposed to have, the way they're genetically coded, they're gonna have a certain brain structure, psychological facts about themselves, which is something which we identify as a woman, or something which is associated to or for a woman. So when you say, yeah, when we examine men and say that their brain structures are different, I can agree that their brain structures are generally different. Like, for example, their corpus callosum is going to be different, which is the thing that connects your left and right hemisphere. But then the way that it's actually going to develop is not fully dependent on your biology. It's going to be something which is caused by your social influences, or how you actually interact when you're growing up. So that's what I'm saying. They're not predisposed towards it. So if you're saying, if you run that, if you run those facts, if you run those facts, I need to finish what I'm saying. If you run those facts into that social influence, then you run into the same issue I proposed at the start. It's not that
So
hard.
you're not understanding what I'm saying about the brain chemistry. What I'm simply saying about the brain chemistry is that in a male, you find that a male, okay, like you might have not read into like the psychology of pedophiles, but I'll get into that later. So in a male, you find that a male has, a certain brain chemistry which we can associate with a male. Okay, we'll say that given, that it has this brain chemistry, it's a man, or this is the brain chemistry of a man. And in a female, you'll also find a similar thing. Now
You didn't talk.
I'm saying that in a situation where we can clearly say that this thing is a female. However, its brain chemistry is such that and obviously your brain chemistry is going to affect massive parts of your psychology, which is why I'm going to get into the pedophile thing later. But I'm saying that when you find that it has the brain chemistry, I'm saying that when you find that it has a brain chemistry which seems to be corresponding to that of a male, even though it's a female, we can say that biologically it's a female, but it's psychologically
You didn't listen to what I
it
said.
seems to be. Yeah, I'm going to respond to what you said. Like I don't know why
You can't respond if you're
you interrupted. You interrupted me, and then like, okay, you got angry when I tried to interrupt you back, and now you're trying to do the same thing again. So like, okay,
I'm sure about it, bro.
so all I'm simply saying, I can present facts for this is that, sure, your brain psychology, your psychology might be in part influenced by the society, but I'm saying that there's a fundamental brain chemistry that everybody has. Hence why we find that in pedophiles, right? And this is like the same thing with people like what's it called again? Psychopaths. We'll say that they have like a fundamentally different psychology or brain chemistry, which causes them to do these things. And that's why we distinguish psychopaths from sociopaths, right?
Yeah,
That's the type of distinction that I'm trying. That's the type of distinction that I'm trying to make. I'm saying that obviously, if you have the brain chemistry of a male, and you say that the brain chemistry causes it to do these certain things, it has a fundamental brain chemistry that's independent of the societal roles or of how society responds to it. Like again, for a psychopath, you there's not much you can do to change a psychopath socially because a psychopath has it in their brain chemistry. I'm saying that the female who feels like a man, or the female that feels like the opposite gender, has it in their brain psychology and in their brain chemistry, fundamentally independent of society, that makes it such that they are indeed a woman, that they're indeed a male. A male. They're indeed a man, but they're a female biologically. That's what I'm saying.
I understand. I understood that the first time you said it. Out of the 10 times you repeated it, dude. What I'm saying is that if you associate a cluster of properties psychologically, like let's say X, Y, and Z, you being a woman, and you're saying that those properties are generally associated with being a woman, or holding to certain behaviors, or whatever else we associate with quote unquote being a woman or feeling like a woman. The point is not whether or not those properties exist. I'm assuming that right now. That's why I'm giving you the reduction. I'm assuming that there's properties such as that. But when I'm talking about the linguistic distinction that we're talking about, or the linguistic the dispute that we're talking about. I'm saying
Not
that it
linguistic,
doesn't really make sense with
semantic.
how we use language, because that's the only thing I'm interested in the conversation.
It's not
It
linguistic.
doesn't. It
I
doesn't
don't
seem to
care.
make sense with
I
how
don't
we
care
use.
how we
Stop!
use
Stop! Stop!
language.
Stop! Stop! It
I
doesn't
don't care
seem to
how we
make
use
sense.
language.
It
Obviously,
doesn't
you do
seem
not
to
care.
make sense. It doesn't seem to make sense because the way we would cash out gender generally is going to be distinct from those psychological factors.
I don't think it is. I think that when
Okay, so
that's why.
what's the
No,
argument
no,
that
no, no, wait,
what's
wait,
the
wait, wait,
no?
wait,
But
wait,
no,
wait, wait,
I
wait.
just need to be clear. What's going to be the bro? What's going to be the argument that the cluster of property psychologically is going to be something which is fundamental or predisposed? Because if it's not fully
I
predisposed,
already gave you
then
the
it's caused
psychopath
by
social
then it's going to be
constitution.
caused in development by certain social factors. If it is predisposed, then it's identical to sex. That's the point, sir.
Wait,
Like we
okay,
just want to
so,
on that for 20 minutes.
wait, okay, so did you not hear the what's it called again? Sociopath. In fact, I'll just send statistics. But while I do
I
that,
know what it's.
did
I
you
know
not?
there's different. Bro, Christ, I know there's differentiating brain chemistries. However, I'm saying that if if you're okay, if a woman and a man at birth are not predisposed to having those differentiating psychological traits, then, like I said, they would just grow up normally to be something which is gender neutral. And what you're saying is that the differences in brain chemistry, since you're not predisposed towards them at birth or biologically or genetically, they'd be caused by some external factor, which presumably here would be most likely social factors. If it
You're
is
not tracking
social
my point.
factors, then an essential property can't make sense because the essential property would be
Yeah,
differentiating between other types of women. You can't have like if you have like you have like a billion types of women, like say Israeli women, American women. No, you have just women. As a gender, it doesn't make sense as an essential property because it's psychologically caused. They can be essential.
okay, so firstly, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in 99% of these cases, you'll find that the brain chemistry can just be identified with the sex. Now, I'm saying that given that there's this outlier of cases, I'm saying that given that there's, these specific outliers of cases, we can say that, there are instances where somebody can have a sex, but their brain chemistry is not actually corresponding with that sex. So, maybe you can like make a distinction between like the strong predisposition and weak predisposition. Maybe there's a weak predisposition for a male to have that brain psychology, to have that brain chemistry. However, there is not a
I
strong
disagree. I
predisposition,
disagree.
meaning that
I disagree
generally.
that I disagree that it's any predisposition.
Okay, so I'll just literally just send the wiki article. One sec.
At least under your view, I'm saying that you'd have to prove that at least for your view to make sense.
Yeah,
Actually, no. Uh, mm, nah, it's fine. Anyway, you haven't responded to anything I said. You want to just conclude or
yeah, yes,
like, yeah, sure. Yeah, save. Oh, that was not a good debate, bro.